Hello, everyone. Welcome tonight to our webinar on the topic of finding your living kidney donor. My name is Michelle Goodfellow, and I'm the Communications and Engagement Manager for the PKD Foundation of Canada. We feel really lucky tonight to have two wonderful presenters, Candice Coughlin from UHN's Transplant Center, and then we also have a patient story from Janine Johnson. To start out with, I'll hand it over to Candice just to talk about, give you an overview of what she hopes to cover this evening.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me to be with you here tonight. I'm super excited to talk to you a little bit about what I think what we specialize in at the Center for Living Organ Donation. So I work as the Education and Outreach Coordinator at the Center for Living Organ Donation at UHN, as Michelle said. And we provide information, education, and support for people who are living with liver failure, with kidney failure, who are waiting for a transplant, also potential living donors, as well as caregivers and family and friends. And what our goal is to be part of your pathway from diagnosis to post-transplant, help you through this, support you with connecting you to peers and with as much information as possible. And one of the things that we do at the center is talk about how to find a living donor. And both Janine and I have personal experience. I had my kidney transplant September 9th, 2009, and my mom was my living donor. But we both have experience in knowing, those fears of what it's like to know that someone else has to step forward to save your life, and how scary that is, and what a what a fear that is to really go through. And so I'm super blessed to work for the center where I can help people through this journey. And so tonight I'm going to talk about how to share your story, how to create an appeal so you can let people know what you're going through. You can use that appeal as an email template, if you want to post on social media, if you want to send it to a newsroom, if you want to put it in a bulletin, or a church newsletter, or a sports newsletter. So all of these things we'll talk about tonight. But it's my great pleasure to get to have Janine here, a friend of mine, who will talk about her journey, and I'll hand it back over to Michelle.
Great. Thank you so much, Candice. Well, I would like to introduce Janine Johnson, and then just bring up her bio here. She is a living donor kidney transplant recipient, and she's the host of the Green Table Talk on the ACB Organ Health YouTube channel. I'm sure she'll tell you all the details about how her journey began and how it ended. But we wanted to share this patient story with you first to give you an idea of what's possible when you're trying to find your living kidney donor. Janine, you may go ahead.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very happy to be here to share my story. As you mentioned, my name is Janine Johnson. I am the host of the Green Table Talk, and I am also one of the founding members of the ACB Organ Health YouTube YouTube channel and committee. My journey has been a very bumpy road. It had its ups and downs, but I am happy to be here, healthy and alive, to actually share this journey with you. So let's start from the beginning. Let's go back. We're going way back into my 20s. I just started college. I was having fun, living the college life, going to school most of the time. And I was, partying and just living life. Life was great. No complaints whatsoever. But then, I was doing the late nights as well. So I realized in the mornings when I woke up, my eyes were really baggy. And I just, okay, I probably need to just, get more sleep, less party, get more sleep. So I tried that. And the puffy eyes were still there. I still had the puffy eyes in the mornings. And I just thought it was kind of strange because typically, that's not something that happens. Even if I went to bed and I had like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, I'm not like that puffy under my eyes. So I went to the doctor. And I explained to him, yes, it's true. I've been, staying up a little bit later than I should, but something doesn't seem right. Something doesn't seem right. So he suggested, various methods. Of course, the cucumbers under the eyes and the mask and the cold mask and all this other wonderful things that we do in our society. None of it worked. None of it worked. So I went back about a month later and I explained to him, maybe about 6 weeks later, and I explained to him, I'm still experiencing these puffy eyes and I don't know what's going on. So he then suggested I saw another doctor. And that doctor recommended me to another doctor. And then one doctor said to me, have you ever had a biopsy on your kidney? And I'm like, what? I have no idea what we're talking about. Never have I had a biopsy on my kidney. How does that even work? What do we do? What's the process? So that kind of caught me off guard because I'm thinking I'm just going to find out how I can reduce these bags under my eyes. That's all I want. And we're talking about kidneys and we're talking about rheumatologists and we're talking about specialists. My head's spinning. I have no idea what's going on. So eventually, the doctor that I started seeing over at Toronto Western, he explained to me that I have something called lupus. And lupus, if you don't know, it's an autoimmune disease where literally it turns against your healthy organs, your heart, your kidney. It turns against your skin cells, and it just breaks it down. And so, unfortunately, I was diagnosed with lupus, and lupus was doing this to my kidney. It was, ravaging my kidneys. And that was one of the side effects. One of the side effects were the puffy eyes. And thinking back on it, I realized I was having joint pains and stiffness in the knees but I never thought anything of it at that time. Like I said, I was in my early 20s. I was living life. I wasn't looking at these signs because, of course, I can't be sick. I mean, everything's going great. I'm in college. Everything's great. I had a boyfriend. Everything was great. I can't be sick. But unfortunately, I was. And lupus just threw me for a loop. At that point, I never even heard of lupus. I didn't know what it was. So started seeing different doctors and explaining to me what type of lupus I had and how we can help control it. But then they also explained to me my kidneys were being damaged because of it. And eventually I would need a kidney transplant. I wasn't hearing it. I was not listening to that. My kidneys are fine. This is the way God gave me. This is the way he made me. Nothing's changing. I don't need to get an organ from someone else. That's unheard of. All I'll do is just, drink more, the green shakes and eat healthier, eat my salads, and my kidney's going to be fine. I have nothing to worry about. Unfortunately, that was not the case. And I quickly realized that I need to listen to my doctors. I need to listen to my doctors, and I need to take this seriously. This is not something that could be fixed with a green drink. This is not something that could be fixed with salads or healthier eating. It's something that I seriously had to, take a look at and realize, what? This is me. This is my story. How am I going to change this? What do I do? And that's when the fear kicks in. That's when you realize this is your reality, that wait a second, I could possibly die because of this. If I don't get a kidney transplant, I could possibly die because, having a living donor versus a deceased donor's kidney, it's a world of difference if I received a living. But then that brings about the question, how do you ask someone for their kidney? Hey, you want to go out for lunch? Yeah, sure, pass the ketchup. Do you want to donate your kidney to me? Like, how do you even bring this up? That's not a part of a typical conversation. So I decided, and so did my family, we all decided we're not going to say anything. We'll just keep it to ourselves. My mom, she's a very religious person. She'll pray about it. It'll get fixed, right? So we just kept it to ourselves, literally just within our household. At that time, I was living with my mom. So it was my mom, my dad, myself, my boyfriend, and my sister. Nobody else. Just kept it literally within that circle. And that was the mistake that I made. Looking back on it now, 2020, hindsight's 2020, that was the biggest mistake I could have made, because how are we supposed to get the word out there that I need a transplant? How are we supposed to get the word out there that I need a living organ donor versus a deceased donor if I don't speak about it, if I don't say anything about it? So we're keeping it to ourselves within just the five of us, and the only person that could actually donate, because they all got tested. My family members got tested. The only person that was eligible to donate or that had the same blood type as myself was my mom. But because of her age, they said no, they wouldn't accept her kidney. My mom said she swore up and down she'll sign any waiver. She didn't care. She just wanted to donate her kidney. I will absolve you if anything happens to me. She said, it's okay. I need to save my daughter's life. And the hospital said no. So what do we do? At this point, my mom went one miraculous day. My mom, she was having a shower. She thinks best. All these amazing thoughts come to her mind when she's in the water. She's a water sign. So she's in the shower. She gets out, she calls me one day and she says, "This is what you have to do. I just came out of the shower. You need to put an ad in the newspaper." And I'm like, "What? How am I going to put an ad in the newspaper? How do I just go up to the newspaper and say, 'Hey, can you help me find a kidney?' Like that's not really a typical thing to do." She said, "We're going to make it work. You're going to go ahead. You're going to put an ad in the newspaper. I'm going to go get dressed because I'm standing here soaking wet. I'm going to have my towel on. This is what we're going to do. I'll call you back." I said, "Okay, well, she's never steered me wrong at this point. So, okay, I'll start looking into putting ads in the newspaper." So I started calling up various newspapers. The major newspapers in our city rejected me. And they said no, because they thought that I was trying to harvest an organ and sell it on the black market. And I tried to explain to them, this is for me. Like, I'm not trying to harvest anyone's kidneys to sell anywhere. I would like to try and get this kidney to save my life. No, nobody would give me the time of day. Feeling defeated, I felt, this is not going to work. I reached out, one last ditch effort, to Now Magazine. And I spoke to this wonderful woman. Her name is Margaret. And I called up and I said, "Hi, my name is Janine. I'm just trying to find out if I could put an ad in your newspaper, just a few lines, put an ad in the newspaper, trying to get someone that's willing to be tested to donate their kidney to me. I'm a O blood type." And before I even finished my sentence, she goes, "Yeah, sure, no problem. Just send me this is my email address. Just send me the blurb that you want to put in the newspaper and we'll have it, we could run it in the next issue." And I was just like, "What? Oh, sure, okay." Caught me off guard, came off the phone, started crying because I'm thinking, this is a glimmer of hope. Like, something positive is coming out of this. I could just feel it. She didn't even bat an eyelash. She just said, "Send it to me, no problem." So I sent her, I just created a little blurb. I didn't have anything professionally done. I didn't reach out to any type of, communications expert. Just a little blurb, just explaining that this is my age, this is my name. I'm looking for a kidney, someone that's willing to donate their kidney to me. This is my blood type. And I just want to live. I just want to live and be here for my daughter, because I was given, at that time, 4 years to live. And that would mean I'd essentially pass away when my daughter turned 16. And that's unheard of. There's no way I cannot be here for my daughter's 16th birthday, for her 18th birthday, for her 21st. This is not something that I'm not even going to entertain this idea. So went ahead, put this ad in the newspaper, and it took off. This newspaper is also an online paper. And so many people started reaching out, so many people. This ad reached Indonesia. I had people from New York. I had people in Boston, of course, here in Toronto, in the city. Then Global News picked it up. They saw it. It was actually Global News, their affiliate in Montreal, that caught wind of the ad. And they said, "Hey, you got a story going on down there. I hope you're running this, later on tonight." And they had no idea what was going on. And then the news anchor by the name of Tom Hayes reached out to me. He, at that time, worked for Global News. And he reached out and he said, I just, got this on my computer, the story. You just put an ad in a newspaper for a kidney? Like, why? How did that come about?" And I said, "My mom." It's just my mom and her shower. It just came to her mind. And he said, "I need to talk to you. When can we meet? What can we do?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, let's do this." So I went ahead. He actually came to my workplace and we sat down and we talked and I shared my story. And it was the outpour, just everyone reaching out. It was just amazing. And it just restores your faith in humanity, realizing that there are good people out there. We always see the bad news. We always see the bad stories. We always see the terrible things on the news and the newspapers and what have you. But seeing all these people reaching out just to save my life, someone that they don't even know, so I can be here for my daughter who they've never even seen at this point. Amazing, simply amazing. So this newspaper ad also started trending online. So I posted it on my Facebook page. I didn't have Instagram at the time. Posted on my Facebook page, and that started blowing up and everybody started responding, and it caught the eyes of this one person. Her name is Christy. Christy actually went to the same church as my cousin. And she said, "Hey, I just saw this ad and this is your cousin." She said, I want to get in contact with her. I want to see if I could, get tested. So my cousin said, yeah, just reach out to her. Just reach out to her. She'll tell you what to do. She reached out to me. She said, "Hi, my name is Christy." This is all through Facebook. No, not even on the phone or anything, just through Facebook. She said, "My name is Christy. I saw your ad. I'm an O positive, or I'm an O blood type. I'd like to see if I could get tested and help save your life." And I said, "Wow, okay, I appreciate that. Regardless of where this goes, thank you for taking that step. I really appreciate that." So she said, "What do I need to do?" I sent her the link. I said, "These are the forms you have to fill out. They're extremely lengthy. They get into everything, all of your nitty gritty. So be prepared," right? And she said, "Okay, no problem. That's fine." She called me back a couple of hours later and she said, "It's done." And then she messaged me, sorry, a couple hours later, and she said, "It's done." And I said, "What's done?" She said, "I filled out the forms." Once again, my mind just exploded because I'd never thought, when she said she's going to do it now, I never thought she was actually going to do it now because it's such a lengthy process, right? So she completed the forms. I said, "Thank you, regardless of what happens. Thank you very much for taking that step to try and save my life." They called her. The hospital reached out to her and they called her and they said, "We want to test you. We want to see, where this can go." And every single time she went to the hospital, she would call me and she'd say, "Hey, I'm going into the hospital today." Or, "Hey, the hospital called me up and I'm going to go in and do some blood work. Or I'm going to this and that and the other." The hospital didn't inform me of that because they didn't want me to, build up my hope and get all excited. But she was coming back and letting me know what was going on. So I really appreciated that. And one thing led to another, and Christy ended up being a perfect match. I believe it was like a 96 or 95% match. And my mind exploded. I said, "Wait a second, that's like a pretty 96, 95, 96, 97. That's amazing. I wonder what's going on. Like, did my father have something going on at the side? How come it's such a close match? What's that about?" So she started to laugh, and we got a kick out of that. The fact that they said the percentage was so high from two complete strangers. A little side note: Christy is an amazing white woman, and as you can see, I'm a Black woman. So that was just another thing that blew everyone's mind. The story got picked up in the States for Women's World magazine, and that was one of the questions they asked. They said, "Well, wait a second, a white woman donated to you. Like, how do you feel?" And I said, "Listen, our organs are all the same. It doesn't matter her skin color. It's the organ that's helping me live. It doesn't matter." And I felt that was something that was that shocked a lot of people, because even on the side, the Caribbean culture side, it's like, "Are you sure you want to get this organ from someone who's not Black? Are you sure it's safe?" And I'm like, "Yes, it's safe." There's so much myths out there about color and race and organ and blood donation and transplants. And so I was just, yes, it's safe. It's okay. And at that point, that's when I realized, when this is all said and done, and when I am healthy and when I am strong, I need to do something to help dispel these myths and these rumors about, donation and donating blood and organ and what have you. So March 27th, 2018, Christy and I went into the hospital. She donated her kidney to help save my life. And I'm forever grateful to her for this, forever grateful, because I have more years to spend with my daughter. She's turning 19 in a couple of weeks. It doesn't even, like, the thought that we even went through that, the thought that when she was 12 years old, there was that bad news that I wouldn't be here for her 16th birthday. I wouldn't be here when she's 16. And now here I am and she's turning 19. You get this greater appreciation. I mean, I obviously appreciate my daughter. I love her to death, but now it has that extra sweetness to it, knowing that, according to the doctors, I'm not supposed to be here, according to the doctors. So now I'm here, I'm healthy, I'm strong. I'm extremely glad that I put the ad in the newspaper. I'm glad I listened to my mom again and I put it in the newspaper, and everybody reached out trying. And sometimes, by the way, side note, I still have people reaching out to this day, thinking, because somewhere they found the ad or they saw it online or something. And you have those, rare moments where someone would reach out and say, "Hey, I saw your ad online. Are you still looking for a donor?" And I said, "Oh, bless your heart. Thank you so much. But I am healthy and strong. I do not need a donor. But please feel free to try and donate to someone else that needs this organ. I appreciate you reaching out to me, but try to, spread that love." and try to reach out to someone else. So this is my story. I am here. I am healthy and strong because someone took the time to donate. They didn't listen to the rumors and all those myths and all that stuff. She just did it because she felt it was the right thing to do. And if you ask her to this day, she doesn't think she did anything miraculous. She just did something that anybody would do. She doesn't see the big deal. She doesn't like the accolades. She doesn't like the praises. It's like, oh, it's nothing. Anybody would do that. It's not a big deal to her. So that is my story. I hope I didn't talk your ears off.
Thank you so much, Janine.
You're
It was
welcome.
just thrilling to hear the entire experience and to hear the response that you got from that one simple small action to start. We're so happy that you shared that with us, and I know a lot of people are going to relate to some of the things that you experienced, and then the process that you had to try and find someone. Now we're going to be talking with Candace, who will be maybe filling in some of the details, some of the things that she shares with some of her other patients who are looking for donors, and also talking about kind of the nuts and bolts of how do you start your own donor appeal. So Candace, please feel free to go ahead.
Thank you. I am going to share my screen here with everyone. All right. And can you see that? Thumbs up? Perfect. All right. So I talked a little bit about the Center for Living Organ Donation before. And one of the things that I do every week is I talk to people about how to share your story. The reason why I call it that is because, like Janine said too, nobody wants to ask. And what Janine has said, and what I'm going to say over and over tonight is, you don't need to ask. You don't need to ask anyone for an organ. What we do is we share our story, we put it out there. And as Janine shared just now as well, there are amazing people out there who want to help. They just don't know that you need the help. So without sharing our story, people can't know. They don't know how to help. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about how we can prepare an appeal. And that's the word that I use often, and you can use it in many ways. But we're going to try to figure this out together. And if you have questions along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we can talk about that at the end. So I'm going to talk a little bit about living donation, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts about how to create an appeal. So Janine talked a little bit about this as well. Some of the benefits of living donation: it allows for a shorter wait for transplant. So on average, donors are worked up in about 3 to 6 months. That's the goal for our living donors at UHN. And then it's a planned surgery. So you know exactly when that surgery is going to happen. You don't have to wait for that call in the middle of the night, or if you're on vacation, if you're not feeling great and we don't hear the call. And then generally it's faster recovery and better outcomes from living donors. So on average, a kidney from a living donor lasts about 15 to 25 years. And a kidney from a deceased donor lasts about 10 to 15 years. And we say that's the average because many people have them that last much longer than that. And some of them don't last as long as that as well. But that's the general average. And it also reduces the risk of us getting sicker or dying while waiting for a transplant, or missing that opportunity for the transplant. Like I said, to miss that call, you may be out of province or sleeping through the phone call. So if you have a planned surgery, you know exactly when it's going to happen. People ask me, who can be a living donor? So really anyone who is deemed healthy enough to be a donor. So family, friends, coworkers, community members, anonymous living donors. Most living organ donors in Canada are actually not biologically related to the recipient. So if you could see that chart in the bottom right-hand corner, over 50% of living donors are unrelated. And that always blows people's mind, that people always think, oh, it's got to be my parent or my sibling. Most of them are not. You're most likely to find a living donor within your extended network. And public appeals can help with that. The criteria for living organ donors is different than for blood donors. So a person who's not eligible to donate blood may still be able to be a living organ donor. And as Janine talked about as well, the donor does not need to be a relative or the same ethnicity. So that matters for stem cells, but not for organs. Like Janine said, our organs all look the same inside. So it absolutely can be somebody you have never met before. This is my favorite part of the whole thing, because as somebody who has received a kidney transplant, I always wonder why people do this and why people donate. Most people who donate have a connection to transplant in some way, but everybody who we have spoken with wants to help or do something meaningful. They appreciate their own good health and they want to save a life and give that gift of life, and they know that they can do that. Some people have a connection to the recipient, so they're motivated to help a family member and save their life. If they were ill, they know that their parent would do that for them. So a lot of adult children want to donate to their parents. Similarly, they want their parents around to be grandparents to their children, and they'd be heartbroken over the loss of a loved one. Now, the big $1 million question, how do you find a living donor? So as I said, tonight we're going to talk about sharing our story. We're going to share our story, let people know that living donation is the best pathway to transplant. Again, you're not asking for a donor. Our ask is that we're going to share our story, and our ask to other people is to share that for us. So like Janine said, putting it out there and asking people to spread the word, share your story, talk about your story in their communities as well. And then if you're interested, consider media or social media, and we'll talk about that later as well. We know that not everybody can be a living donor. Unfortunately, it is very strict criteria to be a living donor for the safety of that donor, but everybody can be a living donor champion. So if you have people in your life who absolutely want to help you, and some of them feel down because they're not able to be your donor, they can become living donor champions. And what this means is they can be emotional support for you. They can help us start the conversation. We know that that conversation feels impossible some days. Many people don't know about living donations, so our champions can help spread awareness to that larger network. And it really takes the pressure off of us to find a living donor so that we can focus on staying healthy while we're waiting for that transplant. Champions can be people who are comfortable sharing your story, who are good writers, people who are good at social media, and then people who with media connections. But more than that, people who are just comfortable contacting a newsroom or connecting with the community. So people who are willing to take that step to share your story. There are many ways to get the message out. Of course, conversations are one way, but those are really hard. Like Janine said, pass the ketchup, and what about organ donation? Sometimes face-to-face is a little bit scary. So a lot of people that we talk to start with emails to their closest family and friends, blogs and newsletters, social media. Faith group announcements are very, very popular and are very successful. And then traditional media like newspapers, radio, and television. Then I add this last line because everybody always asks me about it. Yes, there have been people who have used billboards and bumper stickers and t-shirts, but I don't talk about those because number one, you have to pay for them, whereas all of the other ones are free. And number two, it's a large cost for not a lot of people to see. So we're going to focus more on sharing our stories through the means up on the top there. All right, so there's going to be a lot of information thrown at you tonight, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to send all of these slides to Michelle, and I'm also going to send some templates to her as well. So when she sends an email out to you, you can have all of these. So if you're like me, yes, you can scribble notes throughout this, but you don't need to because you're going to get all of this. So before we get started in writing our appeal, What we're going to do is make sure that you or your loved one is on the transplant list and that you're eligible for a living donor. So some people are eligible for transplants, but they're not eligible for a living donor due to anatomy. Another thing is that your transplant center knows that you're going to do a public appeal. That can really help because then they can know that there might be a lot of questions coming in and they can be ready for those questions. For kidney, we like to know the blood types that the living donor can be. So as you can see in the chart on the top right, if you have blood type O, you can only receive an organ from blood type O. And that's why people in that blood type wait the longest for organs. Whereas somebody with AB blood type can receive an organ from any blood type. So they wait the shortest amount of time on the wait list for organs. So we want to know what blood type you are and what kind of blood types you can accept. Now, if you have a donor who is a great candidate, but does not have a compatible blood type, we also have what's called the Kidney Paired Donation Program in Canada. And so this is when somebody has an incompatible donor, you can go into the paired exchange program with your donor, and we do what is called a kidney swap. So all across Canada, they can be as short as 4 or 6 pairs. They can be long as 24. And living donors donate to strangers and other strangers donate to their recipients. And we cross kidneys throughout the country so that everyone who has a donor who may not be a match is able to get a kidney much faster. How the transplant wants to be contacted with questions for potential donors. So if you are listed at UHN, you're going to use our contact information at the Center for Living Organ Donation because they can send all of their questions to me, and I am happy to chat with them. We have lots of webinars to talk about the living kidney process as well. And then lastly, how to apply to your transplant center to be a living donor. So again, at UHN, there's a link that they can fill out that 12-page health history form that Janine talked about and submit their blood type as well. And then the transplant center will review those applications and they'll start with the person that they think will be the most compatible for you if you have multiple donors. So these are all the things we want to have before we get started in writing our story. Next, we're going to start putting things down on paper. So the questions that I always ask people when you're thinking about writing an appeal are, who are you? Or who is the person that you love who you're writing this about? So who needs that transplant? What are your hobbies? What do you enjoy doing? Who do you enjoy spending your time with? And how has your life changed since your health started to decline? And then on a positive note, what's something that you're looking forward to doing after your transplant? This can be something really, really small or really, really big. So for example, I had very young nephews at the time when I was on dialysis waiting for my transplant, and they were used to roughhousing and jumping all over me and me throwing them in the pool and jumping in the pool with them. And with a dialysis catheter, of course, number one, you can't lift certain weights. And number two, you can't be jumping into pools. So our big goal was to have that transplant so that I could, be more active again in my nephews' lives. I also absolutely love chili, and on dialysis, no tomatoes, low salt, all of those restrictions if you're part of this group. And so I was really waiting for that big bowl of chili. And so I think I ate chili for about 3 weeks post-transplant, as well as chocolate. So, it could be something small like a food that you really miss, or it could be something really big like traveling. I had never been to Europe, and that was also a goal of mine. So think about what are those things that you're holding on to as a goal post-transplant. And again, can be something really small like a can of Coca-Cola, or it can be something really big like going on a cruise ship or a trip that you want to do. This is an example of someone who allowed us to use their story, Vanessa. And so she talks about how she's a daughter, sister, aunt, a rescue dog owner. She worked in childcare. She loved camping and exploring the backcountry of Ontario. However, once her health started to decline, she had less energy, so she wasn't able to be as physical as before. She has done everything in her power to keep her body healthy and strong, but now she requires a transplant. The fastest way for her to receive a transplant is through a living donor. And despite the fact that she's exhausted most days, she's hopeful that a living donor will step forward. Her family and friends want nothing more than to see her full of energy again. So this is a little bit about Vanessa. We get to know that she has a rescue dog, that she loved camping prior to her diagnosis, and that she needs a transplant. The problem with this story is if I read that and I wanted to donate to Vanessa or learn more, there's nothing there for me to take action on. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to collect all of the information for potential donors. So we're going to get the intended recipient's blood type. So that's your blood type and compatible blood types. You can also mention the paired kidney donation program as well. The age range for donors. Now for kidney donation, it's 18 plus. So we don't technically have an upper age limit. It all really, unfortunately, depends on health and age for the donor. What hospital the candidate is listed at, and then surgery details. So for liver, we always talk about how the liver grows back, which is super cool. For kidney, it's amazing. We were born with 2 kidneys and we only need one to live a very, very healthy life. My mom was my donor and we're celebrating 15 years in September. And you would never know that she donated unless she lifted her shirt up and showed you her scar, which she's also very proud of because she has a large incision and not the small one. How do they apply? So a link to the application and then where they can find out more information about living donation. So again, you can put our contact info in there. So this is Vanessa's example of what she wrote. So she needs a living donor, blood type O positive or negative to donate to her in Toronto. We always suggest that people include the positive or negative because often we'll have somebody post that I need a living donor with blood type O, and then they'll get tons of questions. Well, O positive or O negative? It doesn't matter, but people don't know that. So if you make sure that you put O positive or O negative, B positive or B negative, then it takes those questions away. She talks about some details about liver transplant surgeries. Liver donors do not need to be blood relatives. She talks about the age range and the blood type. And then right here, she says, if you're interested in applying, please go to uhtransplant.ca and complete the health history form. You will need proof of your blood type. And they only assess one donor at a time. For the purposes of filling out the form, she included her birthday. If you have any questions about living donation, the Center for Living Organ Donation at UHN can be contacted. So this is really great information for people who want to take action. They can click that link, they can go to the website, they can read more. But if this was all it was posted, we would say, okay, well, Vanessa needs a donor, but I don't really know who she is or anything about her. So what we're going to do is put those all together. And the first thing that we always say is don't bury the lead. And that's a marketing term to basically state what you're looking for in the first few sentences. We know, especially now in the age of social media, most people have a very short attention span. So we want to get them right away with the first sentence being exactly what we need. So, you know, Candace Coughlin is in need of a living kidney donor with blood type O positive, O negative, B positive, or B negative to donate to her at Toronto General to save her life. No matter how much of that paragraph they read, they know who I am, what I need, and where it is. So we want to make sure that we give them that critical information. And then we're going to continue on to our story. We're then going to include information about the application and additional resources at the end, because people who are actually serious in learning more will read all the way through the bottom. A lot of appeals are backwards. So we write all about ourselves and all about our illness and then lead up to the need for the donor. But by then, a lot of people have stopped reading and they don't see what you actually need. So we're going to make sure that we put that all together in that way. This is an example of a young man, and I can tell you that yes, Vanessa and the person who wrote this both received their transplants, which is fantastic, and that's why we use their appeals in this presentation, and they're both doing wonderful. So this is another example of a Facebook post that was made. You can see here that the ask or the lead is at the very beginning. They talk about needing a transplant. Then they go into their personal story. So talking about how their family is not in Canada. The deceased donor waitlist is very long. They talk about growing up in the GTA and through their childhood enjoying active things, but these days they just watch a lot of cold case files and forensic files. And then the one thing that stands out to me is they say, I need someone brave and generous enough to give the gift of life. And that is extremely powerful. They then talk about additional resources. So to learn more about the donation process, here's where you can click. Potential donors can complete the form. And it's cut off a little bit, but at the bottom, they also talk about how if you have questions about being a donor, you can reach out to the Center for Living Organ Donation. So this was a post that was made on social media. People could share that post, so it was made public, and it was shared really widely. And again, a stranger that this person had never met reached out to them and became their living liver donor. These are a couple recent examples of people who have made Facebook posts. And as you can see, there's a beautiful picture of them. It says right on the text, both in the post that they've made and in the photo, that they're looking for a living donor. And so as you can see on Facebook, it cuts off the text at a certain point, right? So that's another thing that we want to make sure that we get our information out as quickly as possible, because Facebook cuts off more than a paragraph. So if people are only looking at that little piece, we want them to be able to see that they're looking for a donor with which blood types. Photos always help. Photos always help to allow us to really get to know that person and see that person as well. Pam reached out talking about how she was a former nurse, and it was actually a nurse who reached out to her who had never met her, who ended up being her donor. Similarly with Wes, he posted how he loves cycling, but since he's been ill, he hasn't been able to. And it was widely shared in the cyclist community, and that's who he found his donor from as well. So once we have our story, we're going to decide where to share. We're going to brainstorm our networks. Often we think that we have, a couple friends and our family, but I don't really know anybody else outside of that. But we want to help you think bigger. So think about your neighbors, your coworkers, groups that you may be part of, faith groups or affiliations. If you have children, sports clubs that they might be part of. Similarly, there are a lot of book clubs now as well. So thinking of those people who may not be your best friends, but that you see and who would be willing to share on your behalf. And then we'll talk about social media as well. Involve your family and friends. A lot of people kind of feel helpless when it's us who are dealing with this. They don't know how to help. And one way that they can help is to share your story. So tell them that living donation is the best pathway for you, and ask if there's a champion that would be willing to help you search for a living donor. This is an activity that we do sometimes. We stole it from a multi-level marketing company. So they would use this to try to think about people to come to their Tupperware parties. And we thought that it was brilliant. And so this is a really great way to kind of get our minds working in who are some people who could potentially be champions for me, or who have big networks that would be willing to post your story either as an email or on social media as well. For me, hairdresser is on this list. I've had the same hairdresser for 25 years, and we've kind of grown up together. And so often he's willing to post things in his hair salon for me when I'm doing events, or if I'm doing charity work. And so really think about those people that are outside of the box. And you'll get this list as well in the slides so you can kind of look at it. We're also going to try to think about where to share. So when we're thinking about social media to find a living donor, we have pros and cons to it. The pros is it's an extremely effective way to share an appeal really quickly with a large group of people, not just in your network, but beyond. There's no financial cost unless you want to add money to boost posts. You can do that for as little as $1 a day. The appeal can be reshared and gain traction on its own. And the transplant community is very active on social media. So many people have shared their story in Facebook groups for transplant communities, and they've shared it out as well. The cons are you are disclosing your personal health information online. It could include details about your family or your work or sensitive information that you've put on there. And although it is your information to share, once it's made public, we really don't have control of where it goes. So that's both a positive because it means it can go very far and much wider than our own networks. But for some people, they see that as a negative aspect, and it's fearful for them because they don't want to share that information online. So before you decide if you're going to use social media, like anything in life, weigh out the pros and cons and decide what works best for you. No matter where you decide to share, always be considerate of other people who might be involved in your story and respect their privacy. So if you have pictures or recordings for your campaign, make sure that you get consent from everybody involved. And then if you do receive a transplant from either a deceased donor or an anonymous donor, we ask that you refrain from sharing the specific date and time of your surgery. That will protect the identity of those people. In Ontario, we do protect the identity of anonymous living donors as well as the identity of deceased donors. And then set yourself up for success. So if you're deciding to use social media, we suggest that you create a new page for your appeal rather than using your own personal page. So similar to how you would create an event page or like a birthday page for somebody or a business page, we suggest you make a page for Candace needs a living kidney donor. You can use our email address as the email. So if people have questions, they can just email us directly and they don't have to email you and then you email us. We know that you're not feeling the best. And so we want to do our best to help you through this process. Create a schedule to keep things manageable for yourself and continue posting as often as you feel comfortable. So some people say, well, I put my appeal out there. What else is there to post? And really, people want to know how you're doing and what you're up to. So some people post about walking their dog. Some people will post pictures of them on dialysis to give some reality to the public because not everybody knows what it's like to live with kidney failure or live on dialysis. So really post anything that you would normally post on your regular page to just keep people in the know of what's going on. And don't be afraid to ask for help. People don't know how to help often, and they want to help. And then lastly, get your story out there. So stay positive and keep sharing. It's easier to say stay positive than it is to actually do, but there is a very large community of people who are here to help you through this process. Myself, Michelle, Janine, we have many peer mentors through the PKD Foundation, through the Transplant Ambassador Program, lots of people out there who are willing to help. And if people can't be your living donor, suggest other ways that they can help. So ask them to share your story, to champion your cause. You can also ask them for other things like grocery drop-off or walking the dog or mowing your lawn. Sometimes people want to help, they just don't know how to help you. A couple things to keep in mind. Potential donors can learn more and ask questions by reaching out directly to the Center for Living Organ Donation. We ask that you don't give medical advice about the applications or donor criteria. An example of that is some people may say, hey, I'm on this medication. Can I be a living donor? You can just send that question directly to the center and we can help them. The donor assessment will determine if it's safe for potential donors to donate. And during that screening process, the transplant team will discuss the risks in detail with the donors. Potential donors can withdraw at any time and their privacy will be respected. So the donor team will not let the recipient know why the donor has decided to withdraw. Transplant centers can't share how many potential donors have applied, but we can confirm if there are applicants and if you need to keep searching. So let's say you put out a campaign, you posted on Facebook and it's been, let's say 4 weeks and you're wondering, has anything happened? I haven't heard anything. You can reach out to me at the center and say, I posted this Facebook campaign. I'm wondering if anybody has applied. And what I can do is just say, you should keep your campaign going, keep posting, or I can say, you don't need to continue posting anymore. And that kind of gives you an idea. And again, stay positive and keep sharing. Some final thoughts for tonight. It's about telling your story. It's not an ask. We're sharing what we're going through. We're being vulnerable, and we're letting people know what's going on. Use advocates and champions to help spread your story. Get the facts from your transplant team before posting. When you do decide to post, don't bury the lead. So state what you need up front. This search takes time and patience, as we heard from Janine as well. Living donors want to donate, and they say that they would give again if they could. There's a massive community of support ready to help you. You are not in this alone, and you are very worthy of going through this journey. So please, again, reach out if you need support. Couple familiar faces, one on the left. Here's some success stories. All of these people have received transplants from strangers who they had never met before, and now they're on front pages of newspapers because they took that jump and that leap to share their story. I'll send this to Michelle. We'll have a Finding Living Donor template so you can follow along, a kidney template. We have an online resource library, as well as social media, and we have a Living Transplant podcast as well. If you have set up a campaign and it's been running for 4 weeks and you've not seen any success, so we're talking about donors stepping forward or clicks to the website, reach out, as we do have further support. We have a new program that's starting where volunteers can help you with your social media campaign as well. We have education sessions at the center. So every Tuesday of the month, you can jump on a call with us, and we have different topics each month, and you can check those out on our Eventbrite page. We have a website called Great Actions Leave a Mark, which showcases living donors and recipients of living donors all across Canada. So from BC to Atlantic Canada. We have a Center for Living Organ Donation YouTube channel, which has a whole page on how to find a living donor. We have an amazing ACB Organ Health channel, as well, as Janine spoke about, where she hosts the Green Table Talk with lots of incredible interviews with people who are part of this transplant community, either as recipient, donor, caregiver, or physician. And then for more information, you can always reach out to Living Organ Donation at uhn.ca, and you can talk directly to me. And that is all I have for everyone today. I know I talk really quickly and get a lot of information out there, but you'll receive all of these slides from Michelle. I'll send them her way.
Thank you so much, Candace. There is a ton of information there. And I'll also let people know we have been recording this session, and we will be putting it on our YouTube channel within a couple of weeks. And we'll be letting everyone who has registered, even if you didn't show up tonight, we'll be letting you know when that's available. So once again, I want to say thank you to both of you for sharing your information with us. We do have time for a few questions, and I noticed that some people have dropped some in the chat. So why don't we get started with those? Someone said, can a donor and recipient be of the opposite sex?
Absolutely. So it happens all the time. There's actually no need to be, as we said, the same gender, ethnicity, race, age. Pretty much if you're eligible to be a donor and you are a good candidate and match, you can donate.
Question I see, someone's asking if the kidney pair donation system works, where if you find a donor, someone who's able to donate, but they're not a match for you, why would you narrow your appeal by asking which blood types you need in the initial appeal?
So I would say the reason why is for time. So it does take much longer to be in the paired kidney donation program because number one, they only do it about 3 times a year. And you have to match across the country. And sometimes chains fall apart as well, unfortunately. Sometimes a donor could get sick or a recipient could get sick and that chain could fall apart. So we've had times where sometimes the chain didn't happen and they have to wait longer. Generally with a direct match, it can happen in about 6 months, max generally to a year, whereas sometimes it can take much longer in the paired kidney program to find a match for you.
Great. I know I have another question from a previous webinar where someone was asking, what happens if they have been told that they are a highly sensitive person, so that their chance of matching with someone is very small? And if they're only allowed to have one person being tested at a time, is there anything they can do to sort of help with that from an appeal standpoint?
Yeah, so there is a highly sensitized patient list that people would go on. And in regards to finding the donor, we know that it can be very difficult when you're on that list. But again, finding a donor who is eligible to donate is, I would say, would be the number one thing. So they may not be a match for you, but if they could be an eligible candidate, then they could go into that program with you and you could find a donor much quickly, likely through the paired donation program as a highly sensitized person versus finding your own direct match. But if you can find somebody who's willing to donate to potentially a stranger, then you could go into that program much faster. So that's kind of the angle that most of the people that I know who are highly sensitized go. So they say, this is the blood type that I need. However, I am a highly sensitized person, so it's harder to match me. If you'd be willing, I'm really looking for somebody to join me to go into this remarkable program.
And is there any limit on the number of potential candidates you can have for any of the options?
No, so the answer is no. The more applicants, the better, of course, because then the donor team can take a look at those applicants and choose who they think would be the best match for that person and start with that person. There's a lot of really famous people who have had transplants. One example would be Eugene Melnick, had a liver transplant, right, from the Ottawa Senators. And there was hundreds of people who stepped forward who wanted to donate. And the really cool thing about that is there were quite a few people who were told, we have a donor who's in workup right now. However, if you were interested in donating to a stranger, would you be interested in continuing on the process to donate for somebody else? And there was about a dozen people who stayed on through that process who were initially going to donate to him and ended up donating to someone else. So we always say, the more the better, because then we can find the best possible match for you.
Thank you so much. I don't see any additional questions, and we're getting close to 8 p.m., the end of our time. Once again, thanks to both of you. Janine, hearing your story, I think will really help inspire people, especially if they haven't even begun trying to reach out to a wider network. And Candace, you've given us so many amazing tips for how to actually tell your story and have it spread. For either of you, are there any places that you would invite people to go to learn more, or if they wanted to get more information about creating an appeal?
I would say they can go to our YouTube channel. It's fantastic. There's a whole playlist there about finding a living donor. Take a look at that. And then in September, during Living Donation Week, September 8th to 14th, we're going to have both an online Finding a Living Donor session, which is a little bit more in depth than what we talked about tonight, and an in-person in both Ottawa and Toronto. So if they go to givelifeuhn.eventbrite.ca, then they can register for that. And both of those are free as well. And then Janine, if you want to chat as well.
There's a lot of inspirational stories as well on that I've done through the Green Table Talk and the ACB Organ Health YouTube channel. One of the people I interviewed was former police chief Saunders, and his story, it was just an inspirational story similar to mine, as his wife donated to him, and no relation whatsoever. They're married, obviously, but no relation whatsoever. But they're like a perfect match. He didn't have to go far. She said to him, listen, I'm going to be your donor. That's it. There's no need to look anywhere else. I'm going to be your donor. And that's exactly how it worked out. So if you know someone that's going through this process, if you're trying to be there for someone, this is a great place to turn to, great resources, a lot of inspirational stories on there, because you do hit those low points. You're like, sometimes you feel like, this is not going to work. You feel like you've hit the rock bottom. I know I have several times throughout my journey. But that channel, there's a lot of stories on there, inspirational stories, and just advice and knowledge on that channel as well. So, and that's something you could definitely share with whomever needs it, or just, to uplift yourself. So it's a great resource.
Thank you so much, Janine. Well, that's the end of our presentation today. I want to thank everyone for joining us live. This will be available on our YouTube channel within a couple of weeks, and I will be sending out all of the resources that Candace has shared with us tonight in an email to the people who have registered, as well as making it available, of course, on our website and social media and the other resources that we have for our community. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.